So hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. It's on demonstrating conformity to general safety and performance requirements under MDR. My name is Laura Mayer. I am a medical device guru here at Greenlight Guru, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's event. Today's webinar is going to run for about 90 minutes total, and we want to hear from you. So you guys have already found on the right side, there's the chat where you can engage with other attendees and post general comments and questions for each other. We'll share the full recording and slides with all registrants after the webinar, so please look out for that email from us. I'd also like to share a few words about Greenlight Guru and why we put on these free training sessions. And that's because improving quality of life for our customers and their patients is our mission here at Greenlight Guru, probably very similar to the mission that you guys have joining us today. We're constantly looking for ways to fulfill that mission, whether that's through hosting these free webinars or partnering with world-class medical experts like today's presenter, or through our award-winning cloud-based solutions. Our focus here at Greenlight Guru is moving medtech forward. Our solutions are designed to help streamline your processes so that you can navigate the regulatory hurdles and succeed in the market. Our MedTech suite provides quality management, product development, and clinical data management solutions designed exclusively for the MedTech industry. So see why over 1,000 of the world's leading MedTech companies trust Greenlight Guru by heading over to www.greenlight.guru after today's presentation and requesting a personalized demo. So with that, let me give an introduction to our presenter today. This is Rochelle Paul, and she has over 17 years of experience in the medical device, regulatory affairs, and quality assurance space. She had a primary focus on implantable and high-risk devices. She has worked with a wide range of devices as well, including software as a medical device and medical devices that incorporate software. She's got extensive experience with the European, American, and international markets, including the compilation of numerous regulatory strategies for Europe and US and multiple 510K clearances. She also has compilation of clinical evaluation reports and technical documentation dossiers, risk management dossiers to MDR regulations. So with that, I'll pass it over to Rachel for today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Laura. So let's begin. Just wanted to be sure I have the correct format. Okay. Wanted to make it. One second, sorry. Here we have. Okay. So good day, everyone. It's my pleasure today to share this presentation with you today and speak about a very interesting topic, which is about general safety and performance requirements, also called the GSPR. So GSPR relate to the Medical Device Regulation. And as you know, previously, it was the Medical Device Directive, and it was called Essential Requirements. So the topic of today is to look on this topic, how to demonstrate compliance with the GSPR. So after a brief introduction today, the agenda of this presentation is to include a review of the major differences, new text and requirements between the MDR and the MDD, really at a high-level overview, so not to provide too many details, but still enough details to really keep in mind the most significant change. So we will see the three different chapters of the GSPR. Then we will discuss about how it can be demonstrated compliance to the GSPR through the identification of applicable standards, common specification, guidance, and how to demonstrate this compliance. Then we will review together what will be a perfect GSPR checklist as expected by notified body and competent authorities. And we will also discuss the topic of other directive and regulation that may also require a kind of essential requirement checklist. And finally, we will go through a Q&A session. So let's begin with a little introduction. So clearly, it can be said that the quality management system and clinical evaluation are definitely related to GSPR. GSPR can contain very general requirements, like, for example, the one in point 11.2. And what is sure is that requirement for QMS, clinical evaluation, and potentially clinical investigation can be required to demonstrate conformity to the GSPR. So they are very important interrelated topics and concepts. So the GSPR, there are 23 different points. 9 are for general GSPR, 13 for design and manufacture, and 1 for label and instruction for use. And as you can see, there are 3 different categories of GSPR: general, for design and manufacture, and for information to be supplied with the device. In regards to label and instruction for use, there is only 1 point, so point 23, but this point is very developed and contains a lot of requirements. If we look at the design and manufacture requirements, there are different topics. So you have requirements about chemical, physical, and biological properties, infection and microbial contamination, medicinal and absorbable substance, materials of biological origin, device construction and environmental interaction, diagnostic or measuring function, protection against radiation, electronic programming systems, active device and those connected to them, active implantable device, protection against mechanical and thermal risk, protection against risk by device supplying energy or substance, and protection against risk for device intended for use by layperson. So this is very complete. There are a lot of key concepts in the GSPR. So what about the general requirements? If we look at the general requirements section of the GSPR and the different GSPR, very at a high level, it can be said that the first GSPR is essentially the essential requirement number 1. So there are some addition, but they are essentially the same. There are the concept of acceptable risk benefit and generally acknowledged state of the art that was added. For GSPR 2, there is really a focus on the fact that the risk need to be reduced as far as possible without impacting the benefit risk ratio. So this is new now. And the GSPR 3 is now a clear expectation that manufacturers develop a risk management system that is compliant to ISO 14971. So they need to establish, implement, document, and maintain a risk management system. This is now a clear expectation. The GSPR 4 contains a more explicit requirement that both the overall residual risk and the residual risk associated with each hazard is evaluated and judged to be acceptable. So this is now clearly written. What else? For GSPR 5, there is now more explicit requirement included related to risk for ergonomic feature, environment of use. GSPR 6 is essentially the same that ER4, that the device must be checked that it is not degraded when subjected to stress. GSPR 7 is very close to ER5. GSPR 8 is now more detailed and elaborated than the essential requirement 6. You have the GSPR 9, which is now related to Annex 16 about product without an intended medical purpose. So this is new. Now, in regards to Chapter 2, you have GSPR 10, which is in fact corresponding to Essential Requirement 7. You have more requirements delineated now. GSPR 11 is very close to ER 8. Now there is a consideration of unintended cuts and pricks, like for needle stick. GSPR 12, the scope is significantly changed compared to the ER 7.4. The requirements are more extended now. GSPR 13, you also have a more expanded scope. So this must be taken into consideration. GSPR 14 corresponds to ER9. And now there is a risk highlighted for possible negative interaction. GSPR 15 is in fact the ER10. GSPR 16 about radiation corresponds to ER11. Now you have more extended requirements in GSPR 17 related to software used with mobile computing platforms. GSPR 18, you have newly introduced requirements related to non-implantable active device. GSPR 19, you have in fact the requirements that comes from the active implantable medical device directive. GSPR 20, this is generally related to ER 12.7. And GSPR 21, this appears to be the ER 12.8 and 12.9. You have a new GSPR really focused on the protection against risk posed by medical device intended for layperson use. Previously, the MDD did not really consider lay use. So there might be instruction that can be understood by a layperson. There are requirements to have this in the risk management process related to usability, and the user can properly use the device. So there are more extended requirements here. What about the requirements regarding the information supplied with the device? So in fact here, this is a GSPR 23 about product labels and instruction for use. There is now an entire chapter about this, and the requirements have been significantly developed compared to MDD. So you have general requirements that require information to identify the device, the manufacturer, and safety and performance related information to the users on the website of the manufacturers. Now you have a requirement that the label bear an indication that the device is a medical device. This is new. And for information on the sterile packaging, you have a separation of requirements. Even if they are similar, this is now more clarified. You have also more expanded requirements. In the IFU, you must have a clear specification of indication, contraindication, the patient target groups, and the intended user. This is now explicitly required. You must have a clarification of what are the clinical benefits, and you must have, if applicable for your device, a link to the publicly available summary of safety and clinical performance. And now the MDR explicitly requires that residual risks are identified in the IFU. You have a section for use by layperson to include information on circumstances when the user should consult with a healthcare professional. You have a requirement for device without a medical purpose that you must clarify there is an absence of clinical benefit and risk must be disclosed. You have a requirement for a notice that the serious incident must be reported to manufacturer and competent authority. So this is a new requirement. And you have the requirement for an implant card if applicable for your device. So to sum up, the GSPR scope has been significantly increased compared to the MDD, and the expectations are that the manufacturer must be able to demonstrate compliance to the relevant GSPR, so the GSPR that are applicable for their device. So how does it work? How can we demonstrate compliance to the GSPR? So the key approach will be that first, it should be identified what are the applicable standards to the device. If there are some common specification, we will review what is in fact a common specification, but also some guidance that can be used to demonstrate compliance. So there are many types of standards. You have vertical standards, like for example, on a group of products. Here you have the example of ISO 9886 on sterile hypodermic syringe for single use. So this is a standard specific to a kind of product. You have horizontal standards, so more general standard, for example, for quality management system, for risk management process, for usability. And you could also have some professional standards like a guideline on congenital heart disease, many other topics on diabetes, or could be a lot of different topics. And you could have national standards. So in fact, the key concept is that standards are not law, so they are voluntary. But compliance to a standard may result in a presumption of conformity to a legal requirement if it is stated like this because it is an harmonized standard. So the approach will be to create for your device an overview of applicable standards. For doing this, you should go to the list of harmonized standards that is published in the official journal of the European Union. and determine what standards is applicable for your device. Some organizations can also offer tools to search for applicable standards. You can also search for professional standards in the literature. And you should be able to determine what standard is applicable for your product. And if not, provide a rationale and create a list of applicable standards. So what are harmonized standards? There are two European organizations that can propose standards to be harmonized. You have the CEN, European Committee for Standardization, and the CNILEC, European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardization. So in fact, the conformity with the harmonized standards presume conformity with relevant requirements. So the harmonized standards are published in the official journal of the European Union, and the European Commission publishes the list of these recognized standards. And now you have also Annex Z. Annex Z are added to standards where compliance with the standard by itself does not provide a consumption of conformity with the directive and regulation. So in fact, Annex Z provides a kind of gap between the standard and the regulation. And to be in full compliance with the regulation, you need to take into consideration this additional provision. You have the example of Annex Z in the standard for risk management, so 14971, or for quality system in 13485 standards. And obviously, for the MDR, new Annex Z must be made. It was done for the MDD, but now it has to be created under the MDR. So in fact, until MDR harmonized standards are widely available, the current harmonized standard can be presumed to be the best available alternative. And of course, this can be discussed with the notified body if they accept this approach. And it must be understood that even harmonized standards are not, they are only voluntary standards, but there are expectations from the notified body. Here you have an example of Annex Z for the standard about risk management process, 14971. So you can see here that it is made reference to the MDR and there are additional requirements clearly stated here. And then you have a table providing a little more details. So the harmonized standards, there is a list that is updated regularly by the European Commission. Here you have a picture of the list, and this list has been updated several times. Here you have the amendment, and you need to be sure that when you are looking for a standard, you look at the most recent list. Now we discuss about common specification. So what is a common specification? This is a new concept related to the MDR. So this is described in Article 9. So where no harmonized standard exists or where relevant harmonized standards are not sufficient, or where there is a need to address public health concerns, the Commission, after having consulted the MDCG, may, by means of implemented act, adopt common specification in respect of the general safety and performance requirements set out in Annex 1. So manufacturers shall comply with the common specification referred to in paragraph 1, unless they can duly justify that they have adopted solutions that assure a level of safety and performance that is at least equivalent to the common specification. So today at this date, there are only 2 common specifications published. The first one was about the reprocessing of single-use device. And the second one is about devices without medical purpose. But it is expected that more common specification will be developed. So, for example, if you are a manufacturer of dermal filler, the common specification on device without medical purpose is applicable for you, and you need to follow the requirements from this common specification. So the concept is that common specifications are developed if harmonized standards are not considered sufficient, or in case of public health concerns, the European Commission can adopt a common specification. So this common specification may relate to GSPR in Annex 1, but also to technical documentation requirement in Annex 2 and 3, clinical evaluation and PMCF in Annex 14, clinical investigation in Annex 15. So common specifications are equally voluntary as harmonized standards. So this may be very powerful documents in the future. So what we discuss here are what kind of documents you can follow to have a presumption of conformity or to demonstrate that you conform to the GSPR. But now you need to develop methods to really demonstrate the compliance. For doing this, you have auditing of the quality management system. Obviously, if you have certification, it is a good point, but this is not something we will discuss here. You also have testing. You will develop testing to your device to demonstrate your device complied with a product-specific standard, for example. So this may be related to device-specific requirements, to bench testing for verification of a single characteristic. It could be use simulation, test in a usability laboratory. It could be certification testing, so EMC testing in an accredited laboratory. So all are related to testing to generate testing reports to demonstrate compliance. You also have other types of evidence can be generated. For example, it could be documented results of processes, like, for example, a risk analysis report, a clinical evaluation report, or also very self-evident evidence. If you need to demonstrate that you have, for example, the name of and the address of the manufacturer on a label, you just have to provide the label. It could also be tests on healthy volunteers. So all are very different means to generate compliance documentation. So if we summarize about standards, common specification, and guidance, so manufacturer must be able to demonstrate compliance to relevant GSPR. So technical documentation is the mechanism by which the documented evidence is stored and presented. Compliance can be presumed if harmonized standards are used. And most importantly, for the specific requirement listed in Annex Z of the standard, additional provisions must be taken into consideration to ensure full conformity with the MDR. So we discuss about standards, common specification, but you also have other kind of documents you can refer to in your GSPR checklist. There are, for example, MDCG guidance. So there are other solution you can apply, and for sure they can be cited in the GSPR. For example, you can cite all the MDCG guidance for clinical evaluation. So if we look more in details on the GSPR checklist, so you need to demonstrate compliance to all the applicable GSPR. You need to provide an explanation, a justification why certain GSPR may not apply to your device. So it's not only to state yes or no applicable or not, but you need to explain why this is not applicable to your device. You need to provide the methods used to demonstrate compliance. So it means testing reports, clinical evaluation report, usability engineering file. You need to define the harmonized standards, common specification, and other solution you applied. So for doing this, obviously, you need to have defined what are the harmonized standards, if there are common specification. And you need to provide the reference of the relevant document. So you need to be very precise what are the reports and where they are located. For doing this, the best way is to use a GSPR checklist. And so you can develop a template. There are today some guidance about what needs to be in the GSPR checklist. So you have obviously the MDR in Annex 2, Section 4, which describe what should be provided for GSPR. It provides guidance on how to properly complete a GSPR checklist. You also have a team notified body position paper titled Best Practice Guidance for the Submission of Technical Documentation under Annex 2 and 3 of the MDR. It's a version 2 of April of this year. And you have a section on GSPR. So this may be helpful. And you also have MDCG guidance about clinical investigation application notification, which includes a link to a Word document. So it's in this case, it's really a GSPR checklist template, but it should be mentioned that it relates to clinical investigation device in the first part. So it provides some guidance, some example of a checklist. So how it should look like. So the checklist should include all the separate requirements split out into single lines. So you have a total of 185 requirements, 18 for Chapter 1, 98 for Chapter 2, and 68 for Chapter 3. So you can see the list is very extensive. You need to provide a description of the requirements, so just copy and paste, in fact, the text of the MDR. It is the best way to do this. You need to state if you comply, yes or no, and if not applicable, you need to provide a strong justification. You need to provide the information of the applied standards, common specification, guideline, and also there is an expectation that you provide the date and the version of this document. So not only the reference, but also which version of the documents you follow. Then you need to provide identification of the complying documents. So it could be test reports, certificate. We need to understand what is the document showing the compliance. And you need to provide the location or where this document can be found. And you should be very specific, so as specific as possible, and not only make a reference to the technical documentation. You could say, for example, which section of the technical documentation lists the reports, but it should be as specific as possible. And this is very important. The GSPR checklist should be a controlled document. So it should be integrated into your quality management system. There should be an approval with a date and a signature. This is a key concept because it means that, for example, if there is a new revision for a major standard or a new MDCG guidance, you need to verify what are the new requirements and what will be the impact on your GSPR checklist. So it is definitely a control document. Here you have an example of a checklist. And as you can see, you have the product name. It could be a project or a file number, because the GSPR checklist is not something that you will complete at the end of the design development, but you need to integrate the requirements very, very early in the design and development phase. So maybe there is no product name, but only a project file or project name. And as you can see, there is a revision to the list. So how we explain, you have each requirements on a single line, which is a copy and paste from the MDR. And you have the different columns with the information, if it is comply, yes or no. If not applicable, why? What are the apply standard, common specification and guidance document? What are the complying documents? So what are the testing reports, the reference of the risk management file, and what is the location? So it could be an example of a correct GSPR checklist. Now we could discuss about other directives and regulation that may also be applicable for your product. As you know, you not only have the MDR, depending on the kind of device you have. There is also the machinery directive. There is a directive about restriction of the use of certain hazardous substances in electrical and electronic equipment. You have the radio equipment directive. You have the medicinal product directive. You have the general data protection regulations. You have the REACH regulation. And the point is that, as you know, when you establish your declaration of conformity, you should have one single declaration of conformity, and you must list all the applicable directive and regulation. And this means that you need to integrate all the requirements from the different regulation. And if, example, you consider the machinery directive, you have also to develop a kind of GSPR checklist, a checklist with essential health and safety requirements, because your device is also considered to be a machine. And for example, here with the machinery directive, you need to list only the requirements from the machinery directive, which are more specific than the requirement from the MDR. But you need to develop a kind of essential requirement checklist also for the machinery directive. The GSPR may not be sufficient. So, yeah, I have been very quick in the presentation, but this is information I wanted to share with you today. So I will be happy to discuss about some question you may have, and that we can go through together.
Thank you for that great presentation, Rachel. I'll go ahead and ask some questions. So first question I have, is it mandatory to establish a GSPR checklist?
So in fact, the answer is clearly no. There is no clear requirement. It's not mandatory to establish a GSPR checklist. But the fact is that it is recognized to be the best way to show compliance by drafting a tabular format, a table with each of the requirements. So by practice, this is now an expectation that manufacturer establish a GSPR checklist. This is something notified body and competent authorities are waiting for, and that they will ask for.
Thank you. All right, next question. When beginning the compilation of the GSPR checklist, should the GSPR checklist be established when design is frozen or at the moment that the technical file documentation is compiled?
Yeah, this is very valuable information. So in fact, the checklist gap analysis, the gap analysis between the device and the GSPR requirement should be started very early during the design phase, because otherwise you will have gap between your device and the MDR. The GSPR, in fact, represent a set of requirements that had to be followed for the medical device. So this is not something that should be drafted at the end of the design and development phase. There are requirements to be taken into consideration as soon as possible when you develop your device.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next question is, the device part of a drug-device combination is regulated by 2001-83-EC. Does this need to have a GSPR checklist?
Yeah. So in fact, in a drug-device combination product, you have a device part, and this device part needs to comply with the general safety and performance requirement. So there will be an expectation to have a GSPR checklist for this device part. So yes, you need to develop a checklist.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I think this is gonna be the last question that we take for today, but this is question is, it was mentioned during the presentation that the machinery directive also contains essential principles and that the manufacturer must consider them in the case of those requirements, are more specific than the GSPR. But how do we determine which requirements are more specific to our device?
Okay, so in fact, the requirements that are generally considered more specific are related to mechanical hazards, to risk from moving parts. There may be specific information and warning to integrate to the device. So they are all related to this kind of hazards that are really specific to a machine, and that the GSPR checklist does not cover sufficiently. So this is the idea, in fact.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rochelle, for your time and this great presentation today.